The first thing any entrepreneur should consider at this time is how can you bootstrap your business? And bootstrapping is a term really which means self-funding. How can you self-fund your operation? Well, there's many things that you can do, and I've listed some of the top 10 tips that will help you survive as you move in terms of trying to sustain your business by bootstrapping. The first thing is you can actually accumulate resources, whether it's cash or whether it's relationships or whether it is credit, before you start. So the most valuable resource at this stage is obviously cash. So Angela could potentially, through her past working career, have managed to save some money that she could use to help to start her business. Whether that's $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, her own money is very important in being able to bootstrap the business. The other thing is, why do you have to do it full-time from the get-go? It makes most sense to continue with your full-time job and then in the evenings or at weekends use that time to start to crystallize your thinking around your startup. So you still have an income coming in, but you're using your outside hours to develop your idea. As things go forward, you may well be able to go to your employer and suggest that you go part-time, maybe doing 4 days a week and then giving yourself an extra day, or 3 days a week. Gradually, as you cut down your full-time job to a part-time job, you give yourself more time to develop your idea. You can solicit funds from friends and family. To me, this is a double-edged sword. It's great being able to get money from Auntie Mabel and Uncle Fred. The challenge is, if you lose that money, there is a long-term price you have to pay for that. You will see Auntie Mabel and Uncle Fred at the family barbecue every year, and rest assured they will remind you of the fact that you have lost their money every time you see them. So you have to think about the long-term consequence of taking money from friends and family. Although it is what I call low-hanging fruit, usually your nearest and dearest are willing to support you in your ideas, but you have to think of what the price is you have to pay if you're not successful with your venture. You can also use crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter, which is based in the US, or Possible, which is the Australian equivalent. What these sites do is they allow you to put up an idea that hasn't been formalized, whether it's for a film, whether it's for a book, whether it's a new product or service, and you can outline what the idea is, and then people in the community can say, yes, I would like to pre-buy the book or the gadget, etc. And that money can then go to you to allow you to actually go and print the book or write the book or make the movie. So it's worth looking at these crowdsourcing sites. They've become very popular over the last 2 or 3 years. You can apply for contests and business grants. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the grants that are available here in the ACT, so I'll park that for the moment. You can also get a loan or a line of credit. I would say over the last few years the banks have tightened up in terms of their willingness to offer credit. However, if you have a long-standing relationship with your financial service provider, it's always worth having that conversation. You may have got a sound enough credit rating for them to be able to advance to you a line of credit or a loan. You could join a co-working space. Here in the ACT, last month we opened Entry 29. In the case of Angela, she needs a developer. So how's she going to find a developer? Well, you'll find developers who are looking for people with business ideas at these locations, which are called co-working spaces. So it would make sense for Angela to go and hang out at Entry 29, maybe put a notice up on the bulletin board, maybe talk to a few people to explain that she is looking for a developer. She may find that that developer is willing to get involved and potentially offer their services for equity or defer their fee. And it's a good place for identifying and finding potential development resources. Equally, you could barter your services. I'm not sure what the skill set is for Angela, but she may have some formal skill that she could bring to the table in terms of exchanging skills rather than cash. Equally, you can think a little bit more out of the box and potentially talk to either your customer or to a distributor and ask them to make an advance. So they may see the benefit of what you're doing, and they may be willing to make a small advance in terms of providing some capital to you to help you actually get your product to market. So these are some of the top 10 tips that you should consider before you do anything else in terms of trying to raise finance for your business. Now we're going to talk about the various financing options, and what I've got on the screen at the moment is the financing options that could be available to EventMate. We've talked a little bit already about self-finance and bootstrapping. We've talked a little bit about debt finance and bank finance. What we haven't really talked about is angel funding. We haven't talked about venture capital or other options like private equity and stock markets. Some of the benefits that you have with self-financing options are displayed on the screen at the moment. What it does is it obviously, the best option is to finance your growth through cash flow. What we've learned from Angela is that she doesn't have a product, she doesn't have customers, so she doesn't have cash flow yet. So she's not in that favourable position. The pros of bootstrapping your company is that more often than not, good product ideas come out of a consulting engagement. So I would be interested to know how Angela came up with the idea of EventMate. I'm going to speculate that in fact in a former life she was in the tourism industry, that potentially she saw the need for this multi-package solution, and she noticed that international visitors and interstate visitors were actually finding it hard to find package deals in terms of the activities that they could do when they arrived in a local territory. And then she also thought, how could you do that potentially via the internet or via mobile devices? So I'm speculating that Angela actually has some heritage in this particular industry. The reason I like this is because people who have domain expertise are usually the first people to understand the problems of their industry. Because they've understood the industry and because they've understood the problems, they see the opportunity. They see the opportunity for creating a new product and service. So I'm speculating that in fact Angela could potentially go and do some consulting to tourism organisations, which would help to raise some finance to help her to crystallise her thinking around this. It would be even better if she could get that Gold Coast customer to actually pay for her time as she went through the process of creating the product. So what the best case scenario for bootstrapping is where you have a consulting engagement in the industry that you want to sell your product, and that helps you understand the problems of that industry, and it helps you think about potential solutions that potentially you could build and charge for. And that's what I think Angela has done in this case. Always disadvantages, so what are the cons of bootstrapping? Well, the challenge is Angela would have to deliver outcomes for her customer. So it would consume a lot of her time without giving her the extra time to actually focus on her own product. So yes, it's beneficial to do consulting as you introduce your product. The challenge is it will take you far longer, and the risk is that some other company or individual sees the same opportunity that you've seen, and they dedicate their time to it and get their product into the market faster. It's a trade-off, and it's a very difficult thing to consider because you obviously want to fund your operations yourself for as long as possible. So this particular slide provides you with an overview of the sources of capital. And you'll see as we go from left to right, this is really a reflection of the maturity of the business. On the left-hand side, we really have a very early stage company like Angela's, like EventMate. And so We classify that in the industry as a seed investment opportunity. It's really to help you to create your product, create the first version, and there are there are options of capital, potential sources of funds that you should go to, and we're going to spend a bit more time over the next few minutes understanding what these funding options are and how you go about securing them. It's unlikely that today, during our masterclass, that we will cover in great detail the ones to the right. So I'm unlikely to cover venture capital in great detail, or private equity, or the public markets. We're really focused today on the seed funding options for getting your business started.